anyone take a hobby like cosplay and make it their full-time job? And how do they make money from it? Well, I'm a professional cosplayer, but I only do one thing, and there's actually several surprising ways people pay the bills through this craft. So I gathered data from over 250 cosplayers getting paid to do everything from sewing to spicy stuff, and what I found is honestly kind of sad. These are the ways cosplayers make money, and some of them are awful. First of all, we need to define the difference between cosplay and costuming, because while they're technically different, they're similar enough that I included the costumers in the survey. Cosplay is the art of expressing fandom, and is best defined as the wearing and/or making of costumes for recreational use, with it most often being a costume of a character from a piece of media, and is a Japanese word made of two borrowed words from English, costume and play. Costuming, on the other hand, is a long-established profession, while cosplay being a job is a very new thing. Costuming could maybe be defined as the making and handling of costumes for professional use, like for movies and theaters, theme parks, and Ren fairs. But a lot of people in the historical fashion community also refer to themselves as costumers, so it could also be defined as the recreational use of costumes, but usually not of a character from a piece of media. And obviously, there's a lot of overlap. A lot of people said both. But the dataset itself isn't super huge, so while this might give us a decent look at the cosplayers, I basically said if you make any money from cosplay at all, then you can fill it out. And I bet the first thing you want to know is how much money are people making? This part is sad. 38% of respondents said that they make less than $1,000 annually from cosplay, with the second largest group at 29% making less than $10,000. But this does not mean that all cosplayers are below the poverty line. An important detail here is that 62% of people indicated that cosplay only makes up 0 to 25% of their income, with only 20% saying they make the majority of their income from cosplay. This means most people that work in cosplay are doing it as a side hustle. But what are they doing? And why aren't they making any money? Of the participants, the most represented job, the job that 39% of people had, was sewing commissioner. This is a job where a person will make a custom cosplay for a client, so the client pays for the materials and their labor and skill set. Sometimes that means the commissioner will make any kind of cosplay the client wants. And sometimes it means that they only make one kind of costume, but with custom measurements. For example, my friend Casey Renee Cosplay used to make custom Jedi and Sith robes for people. So it was the same-ish garment every time, just with different measurements. This kind of operation can be a lot easier than doing any kind of cosplay a client might want, because cosplays can often be wildly impossible garments. And there's a big difference than the time it takes to make a robe, than the time and frankly, mental stability that you need to make a Genshin Impact character.
I was doing just Jedi and Sith for about 2, maybe 3 years, and it was just because I could streamline it. I knew exactly how much how much fabric I needed. All of my materials were streamlined. So I was making these costumes anywhere between 2 and 4 hours, depending on how detailed they were. So I was able to almost basically be like a factory. That's not a good thing, but that's how I was able to do it. For Jedi robes, I was easily making, I want to say 10 to 12 a week. Regular commissions, I would only take 1 to 2 a month, depending on the scale. So I had one costume that was a bunch of armor, a bunch of sewing, just a bunch of things, and that was a whole month. I stopped doing commissions because there's too many hours that you spend, not even in the construction process, but in the research process. That's really hard to determine how long that's gonna take, and it's hard to bill for something like that. Finding a way to properly monetize my time for that was really difficult. On top of it, industry rates are $34 an hour for the bare minimum. That's film industry. I experienced that most people couldn't pay for that. And with the amount of expertise I have, I should be charging upward of $50 or $60 an hour. So when you think about something that I make that's 100 hours, that's $5,000. The amount of people that are willing to pay that is very few and far between. It just was soul sucking. I was making beautiful works of art for ungrateful people. I have a couple clients that have been highly grateful, but aside from those few, almost everyone was ungrateful. And then on top of it, I dipped my toes into education. And once I started that, the reward, like the way I felt from somebody saying, oh my God, I know I made this because you taught me, versus you made this for me. Like they were just vastly different feelings.
What is your biggest source of cosplay specific income now?
Teaching in person is by far like my number one income stream, followed by I have my online courses, which are for like those people who just can't go to a con, with my kits that I sell for them.
Oh, plug your book.
Oh yeah, okay, I have it right here actually. It is Cosplay Foundations. This has 11 projects in it, and it goes everything from like corsets to hoop skirts, petticoat. There's even a whole section on how to make what's called a pattern block. You can modify that pattern over and over and over again, and you know that because you have the base block, it always will fit you. Obviously, unless like you body changes, pregnancy, whatever, all that kind of stuff. I recommend buying it on my website, but if you happen to be somewhere like Barnes & Noble and you see it, I don't know, take a picture and tell me.
The survey also had some quality of life and income security questions that I'm converting into a score. The quality of life questions were: do you enjoy cosplay as much as you do for work as you do for a hobby? Do you still have enough time to work on your own projects? Do you feel like your work is understood by your clients? And a straight up, what would you rate your quality of life? And the quality of life score for the sewing commissioners was a 13.7 out of 20. The income security questions were: do you make enough money solely through cosplay to pay your living expenses? Put away money for savings? Would you be able to cover a $500 emergency charge? Do you feel like you make a fair wage? And would you be able to get by without another source of income? And the income security score for sewing commissioners was a 10 out of 25, which is not surprising because the average income for this one was less than $10,000 annually. Despite that, people do still find joy doing this as a job. Making costumes is my absolute favorite thing in the world. Wearing them is maybe my least favorite part. So getting to make them for others is the best case scenario for me. Also, the flexibility in schedule is wonderful and lets me help take care of my family. I get to help people while doing something I love. But this one also has its downsides. Clients are annoying sometimes and don't measure themselves correctly. Lay people and non-crafters drastically underestimate the work, time, and money that goes into a well-made costume. A lot of people where I'm from have the mindset that service workers owe them their work. So it's happened a few times that I gave a client something they commissioned me for, and then I didn't get paid. And then I got told, you should have done this, as if I could have predicted what they would have done. So client experience can be wonderful or absolutely awful, but why exactly are sewing commissioners not making a ton of money? I think these responses have the answer. Be willing to charge enough for your work. I am still trying to bring myself to do that. It's a lot of time and effort, and if someone isn't willing to pay you for that, then they don't deserve the costume. Try to set fair prices. You don't want to underprice yourself and end up earning nothing. Don't give anyone anything without upfront payment. Don't lower your wages, and don't buy into sob stories about how much a client is struggling if they refuse to pay you. If you're struggling financially, don't commission cosplays. Simple. So not charging enough for your work and people straight up not paying you seems to be a huge problem. But I would also speculate from a Shark Tank businessman perspective that making custom anything by hand is just not going to scale the way other businesses do. You only have so much time that you can be working on a single project, and sewing in particular requires a lot of labor time. And unless you're bringing in other people to do this with you, there's only so much money to be made in the time that you have. And this is why I think the sisters of this job, wig and prop commissioners, might have a little more success, especially the prop makers, because if you're making props from a mold, there's a lot less labor that goes into each subsequent prop. So you could be cranking out one bespoke diamond pickaxe a day, selling them for $200 each, and you've made more money in a week than it took the sewing commissioner to even plan out their next client project. Though I say that, and I stand by that that's a decent business model that could scale, I don't think many people in the survey are doing that because of the few prop commissioners that filled out the form. their average income was about $2,500 annually, with the wig commissioners not far ahead with $7,000 annually. Wigs, I think, are even harder to scale because they require such a specific skill set, and one that is arguably more gate-kept than the sewing and the prop making. However, I do think that the general public has at least a little bit more awareness of how expensive wigs are, and wig commissioners might have an easier time pricing what their labor is worth. Sewing, especially, seems to be one of the least valued skill sets in the world, even though it takes years, if not a lifetime, to master. People who get to set their own prices find it hard to charge enough for their labor, and end up not making enough for it to be more than a side hustle. So if the commissioners aren't making any money, who is? It's the content creators. We've got a couple categories here: YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, and even... I am shifting the focus on this one though, based on the income percentage from cosplay, because I had a lot of people fill out the form that are doing content creation, but it only accounts for 0 to 75% of their income, with that group's average income being about $7,000 annually. But when we get to the people who are in the 75 to 100% income from cosplay range, it actually starts to be a livable wage for some places, with that average being around $45,000 annually. But how do people make money off of social media? I'll start with YouTube, because it's my actual job. I have 2 sources of income when it comes to YouTube, and then I have Patreon, but I think we all know how Patreon works. Thank you to my patrons. But my YouTube money comes from 2 sources: AdSense and sponsorships. AdSense comes from the money that advertisers pump into YouTube to show their ads on videos. So the more people watch my content, the more ads they see and potentially click on. And then that leads to a bigger portion of advertiser money that I get. But if a video doesn't get a ton of views, it doesn't make as much money. The second, though, comes from sponsorships. This is when a company pays me directly to devote a section of my video to promoting their product. These are great because they're agreed upon beforehand and are a way for we as YouTubers to ensure that the work that we put into that video makes us money without having to worry too much about how many views that video got. But the downside is sometimes you gotta pay the bills and you end up doing a sponsorship for maybe a mobile game that you don't even like. But sometimes you end up with sponsors that make everyday products that you really love and really do use every day, like today's sponsor, Kitsch. Hold on, do you want to know how I get these beautifully perfect curls that I'm always rocking? Because it's Kitsch. I first worked with Kitsch last summer, and since then, the only way I curl my hair, the way my hair has been curled for like every video that you've seen in the past year, has been with their heatless curling set. I have a couple hacks for it that you can see on screen right now. I love this thing so much because it is the only kind of roller set that I've ever been able to comfortably sleep in. Plus, if you get your hair wet enough and leave it in for long enough to fully dry, then those curls last for days. You can even see the life of this one wet set through some of the interviews in this video. I also have straight up evidence that I've been using this for the past year, because anytime you've seen me wear this white crocheted hat with all of my hair up, it's because the curler is under there and I just cover the curler with the hat. And yeah, obviously that means that I don't wash my hair all the time, but when I do, it is with their amazing and sustainable bar shampoos and conditioners. I've also been using these for the past year, and you can even see this one that is like almost totally used up. These have rice water protein in them, which is supposed to help strengthen your hair and improve its texture. They're also free of phthalates, parabens, silicones, and sulfates. And if you have color in your hair, sulfate-free is the way to go because sulfates will strip your color so much faster. It leaves my hair feeling soft and healthy, and it is an extremely affordable price, especially considering how long the bars last. Despite the fact that my ends have been bleached several times by me, my hair has never looked this good or been this effortless, and I have Kitsch to thank for that. So if you're interested, use the link in my description or use my code Spaceman to get 25% off your first order. Kitsch ships everywhere in the US and to 27 countries internationally. Plus, if you grab their subscription option, you can get an even better discount. Another thing though about sponsorships and AdSense is that they both require a lot of work to get to the point where you can have either. AdSense requires getting monetized on YouTube, which takes 4,000 hours of watch time and a bunch of other requirements that they keep changing. But the watch time alone takes so long to get when your channel is small. And sponsors will generally only work with channels that have a certain average number of views, and I have been told that the golden number for that is 50,000 views. So again, it takes a really long time to establish a channel of that size, especially in a niche like cosplay. But that's YouTube. For Instagram, I'm pretty sure people make money off of the Reels bonuses program, but they took that away at some point, and then they brought it back. But I really wouldn't rely on that, honestly. And then I think TikTokers make money by making actual faces on live streams while standing in the street. Similarly, though, I think we all know what the fan refers to. Our singular fan creators, though, are making a living. While I only had 11 respondents that were doing that kind of work, their average income was about 40 grand annually, with some even stating that they make over $100,000 a year, which was rare to see in the survey overall. And with a 15.8 for quality of life score and a 14.6 for income security, they're doing better than the commissioners. Some cite not having a boss and being able to work from home as their favorite things, but the downsides cannot be ignored. This is what one person hates about this job: men. OF pays the bills, but I've dealt with leaks and sexism and no job or amount of money is worth that, especially when that form of content creating doesn't make nearly enough to warrant even a percentage of the pain. And one person wanted people aspiring to do this job to know, not all full-time OF creators make the big bucks. Don't be blinded by the ones that make the big bucks. Another said, people need to realize that spicy content creators are real humans who work really hard and need to be treated as such. A lot of people seem to think that the men buying the content are the people giving spicy workers the worst treatment. But honestly, I experience much more from people who don't watch my content, but are just angry I do what I do. I've had people try to get me banned from cons or tell me I shouldn't get to compete in cosplay contests because of the work that I do. And I just thought this one was funny. If you want to be an OF creator, remember to go to R34 every now and then and see what's trending. And while I'm a sex-positive person and I support sex workers, we should still all remember that we live in a society, and in a society that has very few protections for sex workers. I wish we didn't, but we do. And if you choose to do work like this, there will be people like the ones from these anecdotes that will try to hurt you. So the best advice I can give you is keep as much of your personal information off the internet as possible. And that goes for all content creators, but especially for the spicy ones. Stalking, doxing, and harassment are things all content creators have to fear, even smaller creators, even non-spicy small creators. I reached out to one YouTuber respondent, Colleen Cosplay, who had some terrible firsthand experience with this awful stuff.
Hi, I'm Colleen, and I run the Colleen Cosplay YouTube channel. Cosplay is very much a side hustle for me. I still work a regular desk job. I do a lot of tutorials, and I also share my experiences as a disabled cosplayer. The experience I had with stalking and doxing, it started when I had a really small channel, and a lot of people think that if you have a small channel, you're like immune from these bad malicious people on the internet, but I'd say it's actually the opposite. I had like less than 300 subscribers on YouTube. Most of my videos only had maybe one comment. So of course I would answer every comment, every message. It started out like very normal. This person was just like, hey, I'm a fan. Every now and then they would like push the boundaries, like, hey, I'd like to get to know you better. Where do you live, by the way? This went on for a while, and I kept just denying information until one day I got a message saying, hey, I found out where you live from your videos. Essentially, in my con vlogs, I would say things like, wow, this con's 4 hours away. I don't know if I'll go next year. Or, oh, this con's only an hour away. I'll wear my makeup in the car. And they took that information, like the distance from cons, and kind of like triangulated it out to find the city I lived in. And from there, they would go onto my videos and write comments saying, this is where she lives. Of course, I did end up blocking this person after they, did that. It was a really tough decision because like as a small creator, I was like, oh no, they're my fans. I have to like cater to them. You don't. I probably blocked about 50 accounts over the next year. From there, it escalated to like, I know where your home address is now. So this person also said they'd like find me at a con and me. It ended up being a bluff, but it was really scary, and it's been 2 years since I've heard from them, so blocking and ignoring after a year eventually worked. But also, I started my channel in 2018, and I do talk about cosplay and disability. A lot of people will kind of trauma dump on me about their medical trauma, looking like for someone to commiserate with, but that times a few hundred is really overwhelming. My stalker in particular was kind of that case where it like they said they were disabled and kind of wanted to commiserate together, and then they were like, you saved my life, actually, you're my best friend. You know, I just think people found me as like someone they felt they could talk to, which is awesome. That's a good thing until it crosses the line, right? And that's what happened here, is it crossed the line, and I wanted to help, I wanted to give advice, I wanted to be their friend, but unfortunately you cannot be the friend of every stranger on the internet. It's not safe.
What advice do you have for people that might run into this?
Just lie. I know that we're told lying is bad, but this is the time lying is good. I think if the very first time this person asked where I lived, if I just lied and made up something that was reasonable but false, they would have left me alone. Because me setting the boundary of I'm not going to tell you where I live, they saw it as a challenge, like, oh, I bet I can figure it out. I recommend this like at cons. Like I said, people can find you at cons from your lineup. If they ask what hotel you're staying in, lie. If they ask if you're there alone, lie. If they ask where you're coming from, lie. And of course, like, don't go to cons alone if someone's threatening to assault you at a con. Like, take a friend with you.
YouTube and Twitch specifically often create a very strong parasocial bond just by the nature of how long the content is and how it usually focuses around that one person. And sometimes people take that bond way too far and way too seriously and do seriously dangerous things. So yeah, being a content creator requires facing some pretty negative things and a ton of work, especially when you're just starting out. I still do 99% of everything that gets put on this channel, and most smaller creators are doing exactly the same. And while these are careers that can eventually make you a living wage, it still takes a very long time to get there and requires a lot of unpaid labor. But if you do get there, there's money to be made, and not just regular income, because YouTube especially comes with passive income, which is not the kind of thing you can get with any commission of any kind unless you're making patterns. Patterns are the templates we use to make clothing or props, and nowadays there's a pretty decent market for selling patterns for specific characters. Or if we look at somebody like Kamui Cosplay or Evil Ted, there's a huge market for EVA foam patterns for generic bases for props and armor. And while I didn't have too many pattern sellers fill out the form, patterns are a big source of passive income for some people, because especially if you're doing digital patterns, you make it once and then you just let it make money forever. Though you will have to occasionally be your own customer service representative when people have questions, and you should be very careful about what you name the patterns so you don't end up with an Etsy takedown notice from DreamWorks, like I did. That's why all my patterns are free now. But overall, if you are making your own patterns for cosplay, you should try selling them for a little extra cash. So what about the costumers? So I actually had a pretty decent respondents from the theater in-house costumers and theme park costumers. These aren't people that wear the costumes generally, they're people that make them or maintain them or even dress the performers. Of the respondents I got, about half of them are working full-time, and those people are making a living wage with an average income of $40,000 a year, though they scored lower than the sewing commissioners on the quality of life score with a 13.2 and a 12.5 for the income security. Here's some comments about people's favorite things about these jobs. I work primarily constructing Broadway costumes. The most rewarding part is seeing my work on stage and getting to be creative in my daily life. Another said, very few things bring me more joy than seeing someone in a fitting light up when they put on clothing I've worked on. Whether it's altering a suit for someone who's never had one fit well before, or making something beautiful and elaborate for them to swan around stage in, bringing joy and comfort and confidence and transformation to the people through clothing is my biggest pride in what I do. But it seems like people's least favorite thing was the hours. Very long hours when working shows and not enough time to live can be very underappreciated. Having to put in 70 to 80 hour weeks during tech week / final dress. The undervaluing of the labor that I do as a costume maker is very frustrating. I have been working professionally making costumes for 9 years full-time for theater and private commissions, and I still do not feel properly compensated for my skills despite advancing in my career. In theater, costumes is often one of the lowest paid departments because it has historically been viewed as women's work, and the technical skill and training needed for the job was not recognized. Now, I know jack squat about these jobs, so I reached out to my friend, fellow cosplayer, and theme park costumer, Magda, to find out what these jobs are like.
Hi, my name is Magda Alexandra. I go by Magda on most social media, and I'm a costume assistant at one of our local Central Florida theme parks. I've been a costume assistant for 2 years, but I've been in costuming at theme parks for about 3. When a costume goes from the character concept all the way to, you know, being a character at a theme park, it goes through several steps. You have a designer who designs the clothing. You've got pattern makers who make the individual patterns, and you have your costumer who is responsible for sourcing all of the material. They talk to the vendors who are going to make certain things with the costumes, and then it goes through either people who are going to sew the costume or the fabrication team, which would be me. And I do all of like the detail work, anything that's not with a sewing machine, anything that has to do with carving or hardware or even rhinestoning, that's what I would be doing.
So we're actually looking at like a whole train of different kind of costuming roles in these jobs.
Yes. Right now, costuming is still seen as an unskilled job. So a lot of us who are in the industry right now, despite going through like several interviews to get this job, are still considered entry level. Even in like bigger industries like the film industry, a lot of the costuming team still goes like widely uncredited. My jobs vary day to day. A lot of it is project based, so I, clock in and I have an order that I have to work on, and depending on what it is that day, so maybe I'm just gluing a whole bunch of things, or that day I have an order of like 60 to 100 costumes, and they're like, they all need to be rhinestoned, and they all need to be rhinestoned the same exact way. Especially when you're starting out, even just try a little bit of everything, see if it's something that you really want to do, because if you go into costuming, there are several levels that you have to get into before you start, like, you become a designer or something like that. Like, you're going to be doing a lot of laundry when you start out, like a lot of laundry.
The next one is a job I would mainly call a side hustle, based on how not a single respondent said that it accounted more than 50% of their income, with most of them saying it was less than 25. But it's one I want to talk about because it's a side hustle that I think a lot of current cosplayers could easily get into, and it's one I've actually done before, and that's princess parties. Princess partiers are independent people who get paid to go to events like children's birthday parties while dressed up as and acting like a Disney princess while not being associated with Disney. And when I say a Disney princess, I mean Elsa, because apparently that's still what the kids all ask for. You show up at the party in costume, you read to the kids, or you do face paint, and you stand there for photos, or you sing. It's not a lot of people's main jobs because it's the kind of thing you can only do on weekends when you occasionally get booked for a child's birthday. Obviously, you have to like children to do this, but the people that do it say that that's their favorite thing. Bringing magic to kids and adults all around my hometown, bringing Disney quality costumes to children that can't go to Disneyland. I adore my princessing job because it's an opportunity to bring magic into people's lives, especially young kids. I get to stand there and literally be their hero for a moment and help to teach them meaningful lessons of self-worth through my performance. It's a job that is truly instantly gratifying in the most fun ways. Being able to wear pretty dresses and earn an extra few bucks is a nice little side hobby. I love being able to tell people that I'm a part-time princess. That if it were for the money, I would have stopped a long time ago. Being a princess has changed the course of my life in unthinkable ways. I wish they knew that I do this because I truly love what I do. But the downsides were how much money goes into the costumes and the upkeep, and of course, gaslighting, gatekeeping, and girl bossing. The upkeep for decent princessing costumes and wigs is hella expensive, and there is a massive amount of toxic pretension and gatekeeping in the princessing circles that has never sat well with me. Lots of bullies and big egos that are exhausting to manage. I found myself going more behind the scenes with costume management and assisting events over competing with the other performers purely out of exhaustion from the egos. The clients do not understand how expensive this stuff is to upkeep. Dresses, wigs, proper undergarments, shoes, it all costs so much to keep nice and perfect for each party. I wish more people understood that being a princess is just cosplaying. There are some people in the princess community that will bully or make fun of cosplayers when they're doing the same thing, but getting paid. Okay, now I want to talk about princess parties.
Oh, lordy.
And I just have one question for you.
Okay.
Would you like to issue a warning about Wig Guy?
Oh my, that man.
Do it real quick. Who the fuck is Wig Guy?
Okay. Okay, so Wig Guy. His name is Daniel Staley Myers. He is from the UK. He is been in the Disney cosplay scene ever since I can remember. It probably started before Frozen, but it definitely became a big deal when Frozen happened, and then princess parties started popping up everywhere, and Disney cosplayers started popping up everywhere. He just started messaging people oh, hey, do you sell wigs? I was selling Rapunzel wigs, and he would message me, and he was like, hey, do you sell human hair Rapunzel wigs? And I'm like, no, why would I do that? And he was like, well, Rapunzel wigs should be human hair, and you should wear your natural hair. And I'm like, when I have 70 feet of hair, I will let you know. And yeah, so he goes around and he does that to every Disney cosplayer, regular cosplayers now. He'll go and harass them saying why aren't you wearing your natural hair? It's very much it's like a thing for him to see people in their natural hair, and he'll not only contact them, he'll contact actors who do smaller roles on Disney Channel shows or Nickelodeon shows. He'll contact regular theaters to do the same thing. So he's very notorious. If you get approached by the Wig Guy, you should feel like you've made it on some level.
Okay, my warning I would like to issue about Wig Guy is if you see Wig Guy, do not engage.
Oh my gosh, don't engage with Wig Guy.
Don't engage.
If you block him, he'll find another account to try to engage with you. So it's if you feel like it's Wig Guy, maybe just block. It probably is just Wig Guy in a different hat. In a different wig.
Finally, I had a huge percentage of people with random jobs related to cosplay that didn't give me enough data for a whole breakdown, but here's a lightning round of other cosplay jobs and their approximate income. In the 30K a year category, we've got a 3D model and print design seller and a fursuit maker. In the 50K a year category, we've got a costume print and embroidery designer, a mascot maker, and somebody selling kits. In the 100K a year category, we have a leather maker and a full-time cosplay teacher at a school, and then somebody making less than $1,000 who just responded, shoes. For anybody that wants to have cosplay be their career and is maybe thinking about getting a degree to do that, this is the statistic I want to show you. 46% of participants had no formal education in costuming, and 23% only had high school classes. We only had 8 people with a master's degree. I've said it a lot, but I have a graphic design degree, and I worked in motion graphics and video editing for 6 years before I became a pro cosplayer, and I am absolutely certain that the reason that I sit here today as a full-time YouTuber is because of that life experience and not the 12-ish years I've been doing cosplay. Some of us have been incredibly lucky and blessed and have been able to take our hobby and make it our career, but for most people making money off of it, it's a side hustle. And while it's amazing to be able to make money off of your art, sometimes doing it for others diminishes the love you have for being creative. And it is always okay, and sometimes even better, to just enjoy it to its fullest as a hobby. I thank you for making cosplay my career. by watching, though I would argue that I am still mostly a video editor. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel directly, you should check out my Patreon where you'll get some exclusive content. But if you're just watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sending the video to a friend of your mom, or subscribing, then you are supporting the channel too. So thank you. Please subscribe. The data set will be linked below, and please remember I have a graphic design degree and I am not a statistician, so there could be a lot of things wrong with the conclusions that I came to, and the way I collected the data could be totally wrong, but I feel like this is a decent look at how cosplayers make money. But if you look at that data and you're like, Sarah, you're a dumbass, then please feel free to tell me I'm a dumbass in the comments down below. And a big thank you to my newest big support tier patrons: Talia, Okumaha something, Cherry, Belladonna, Sean the Galian, Dina, Mew Lancaster, and Barking Cat Cosplay. I just had to pop in for one last thing in a better outfit. The woman that basically invented cosplay being a job, Yaya Han, her career is built on molded and cast cat ears. And I know that because I just read the entirety of her book for a different project. What project is that? I'm so glad you asked.
Welcome to the artistic, sexy, and cutthroat world of cosplay.
No.